Welcome back. It's just gone at 5:20. You're watching or listening to me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News. Now, a new study has found that trans women taking specialised hormonal drugs are almost twice as likely to suffer from cardiovascular disease as men. Basically, if you're a trans woman and you're on medication, apparently you're about 95% as likely to suffer heart disease, which is a shocking statistic and not one I imagine they tell you when you decide that you're going to do it. The study also revealed that transgender people, so regardless of background and sex, are significantly more at risk from deadly conditions like strokes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol levels when undergoing long-term drug schedules. Yeah, who would have seen this coming, eh? But more on this could be brought to us by Health and Social Affairs editor at the Sunday Express. It's Lucy Johnston. Lucy, thank you very much. Look, OK, the first things first. So if you're a trans woman and you're on a certain type of testosterone, right, you're 95% more likely to have heart disease, basically. So, yeah, it's pretty catastrophic, isn't it?
Yeah, so trans men, so men who are wanting to become women, yes, will be taking estrogen, and women who identify as men will be taking testosterone, and both those drugs carry risks, and this study shows they carry different risks, but there is evidence that both those drugs increase the clotting factors in the blood, and this may explain why there's an increased risk of heart disease and blood clots and strokes. But the data out there is very uncertain. So we've got this study here that's been put out recently, put out today, and then there are other studies which don't show the same effects. So this whole area is really uncertain, and there is huge debate over it, and it's very difficult to do long-term proper trials, because with proper clinical trials you need someone on the drugs and then you need a control group on a dummy drug, and that isn't possible to do. So there's a lot of debate and a lot of, but all drugs of course carry side effects, and there's been a huge increase in the number of people who are identifying as trans, both in children and adolescents and in adults.
Now there we go.
In the children, there's been more controversy because many doctors have said that definitely the risks appear to be outweighing the benefits, because we don't know the long-term effects.
Yeah. I mean, OK, I mean, we don't want to go down the vaccine rabbit hole too much, just mainly because I haven't got the energy today. But, you know, similar things about long-term data, etc., right? But when it comes to this, if we've got studies that appear to show, or could at least in any way indicate that if you, as a fully grown adult, so, you know, I have now, unfortunately, fully developed. And so if I then went on stuff, and then I am at least altering what is, you know, fixed in stone, as it were. But if you put children on things like puberty blockers, or you know, pump them full of different hormones, or that's before we've even got down to the actual surgical alterations that could be made for kids as well. Is there not a very real possibility that they are going to have some massive health consequences in the not-so-distant future?
I think, again, this is hotly debated, isn't it? And you get into trouble for saying both things. But the basic point is there isn't good long-term data on this. We haven't got long-term studies. We don't know what happens. There is a risk that there's permanent infertility in children. There is a risk that the bone health is affected, and that could have long-term implications for fractures. And there is a risk of clots and heart disease long term. So it's not routinely recommended anymore by the NHS. I know other countries have banned the use of these drugs in children, but at the moment it is being used on an experimental basis and being used, it's unregulated, so children can go, or people can go on the internet and get these drugs and just get hold of them and use them, and there are doctors that will prescribe them because they are allowed to be prescribed in some circumstances. So it's a really fiercely debated topic. For adults, again, the data is still not clear clear. We don't know the long-term harms. And some people say, well, it's not clear, that there is a risk of increased heart disease and strokes, but that may be because these people are also be more likely to be taking recreational drugs, and that may increase their risk. They're more likely to be stressed, and that may increase the risk. But the bottom line is there's no clear, good evidence that transitioning reduces your risk of suicide or improves your mental health.
This is another good thing, Lucy. This is another really good point there, because one of the big arguments in favour of allowing young children to transition or making it easier for adults to transition is that if you didn't do that, their mental health would suffer to the point of suicide. And we can't have that. We can't have people in a position where they were going to end their own life as a result of being so miserable about living in their own body. But what I think you appeared to suggest there was that there doesn't really appear to be any conclusive evidence that having transitioned, having gone through all of that, will make them less likely to end their own lives.
I think there are real problems with the few studies that have shown that it improves outcomes, and the follow-up isn't good. And there is systematic data that suggests quite the opposite. So given that there's no clarity in the data, given that we don't know, and given that there are some studies that show an increased risk of suicide and poorer mental health outcomes, whatever the debate you might have, then once we don't have that good data, then we should be really, really careful about what we're doing. And people need to know about the risks they're taking before they start taking these drugs.
Lucy, thank you very, very much.